They should too.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you.
Hello and welcome to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. And we're broadcasting worldwide on the internet.
Are we heard in Canada?
We're heard in Canada.
Because it's Canada Day.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it used to be called Dominion Day.
Okay.
And it was Adam Schiff the other day who said that we all may be moving to Canada soon during a discussion about disinformation and election interference on social media platforms. Pretty interesting connectivity there, huh?
Well, you know, the UN Security or the UN General Assembly didn't really care about that because they denied Canada a seat
Right.
on the as a non-permanent member of the Security Council.
Favoring Ireland.
Yeah, they put Ireland in there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better countries in the world, as you and I can probably agree.
Well, I lived there
Yeah.
for a time. I'm not sure I would necessarily characterize it that way. But
Well,
that,
they're
it was,
basically a neutral country. They're not aligned with, you know, they're friendly to the U.S. certainly, but they're not aligned so much with the, you know, the Five Eyes or anything like that. Like
yeah,
Canada
they've always
is.
been neutral, even during the Second World War. You know what they called their relationship to the war, don't you?
I don't know what they called it. No, I know they
The
were
emergency.
Neutral. The emergency.
It's an emergency.
Okay.
Oh man. Oh, the more you get into that culture, the more interesting it is, and
Yeah.
I'm quite fascinated by it. But I mean, it's a mess in a variety of ways. So.
Yes. But at any rate, you know who kept Canada out of the Security Council job?
No.
Venezuela.
Ah, interesting. Oh, because of their
Yeah, because
their
they're the ones
interference.
that backed the OAS.
Mhm.
And that actually started the Lima group
Right.
and against Venezuela,
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
right? And also the OAS report on the elections in Bolivia that ousted the leftist but generally successful president, Evo Morales, I think it was, Evo Morales. That study has now been admitted by the New York Times as having been faulty, and the election was or should have been held valid.
Yeah.
But the poor guy's in exile.
Yeah.
He's not gonna-
But to cite the New York Times for anything is
I know.
dangerous.
I know. Especially after the latest outbreak of Russia.
What a segue, huh?
Yeah, Russia is the New York Times, the Washington Post, and I think it was the Guardian in England, published a totally unconfirmed story with anonymous sources in from the CIA, no doubt.
No doubt.
Yeah, that.
So these are the anti-Trump forces that are still there and
Mhm.
are very difficult to find and weed out.
right.
So I see this is the latest chapter of the coup d'etat, the ongoing coup d'etat.
Right.
And there'll probably be another one before November, I'm sure.
Right.
Maybe two.
Well, the story is, like I say, totally unsourced. They claim criminals associated with the Taliban, is what I'm hearing now, say that they came across stashes of money with the Taliban. But you know what? We've never really investigated the $1 trillion that the army somehow lost in Afghanistan. Maybe that's part of it.
I think it might have been more than $1 trillion.
Yeah, not counting the official expenditures, you know.
Right.
And there have only been a handful of Americans killed. I think in January, 2 Americans were killed by a roadside bomb.
Right.
So I don't think they would have collected a bounty on that.
Only 2 so far this year. So, I mean, it's a stretch to say that any of this could be legitimately become part of our narrative of what's going on in the world right now, except that it's designed to hurt Donald Trump.
Yeah, and hurt relations with Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Russia does have a reason to be involved in Afghanistan. It's right on its border. They were involved there.
They used to occupy it.
Yeah, they used to occupy it. And, you can say what you will about that, but those video clips you may have seen about Afghani women walking around in Kabul with miniskirts, that was during the Russian occupation, not currently. But so the Taliban has controlled most of the country except for the area around the capital, for many years. And there had just been a breakthrough, probably facilitated by Russia, for the U.S. and the Taliban to sit down together. So they're hoping to scotch that. They're definitely hoping to keep Russia out of the G7.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
That's the neocon Lincoln Project constant drive, is to keep them getting anywhere close to us.
Do you know, in case your audience doesn't know, the Lincoln Project is the neocon-based group with shady characters like Rick Wilson in charge and others. And the thing is, they had a video to go within hours of this announcement.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So something is very, very fishy here.
It's very organized. It's a desperation. They're just 4 months before the election, and it's either now or they get Trump for 4 more years.
Yep.
That's really all it is.
So but I heard one senator, Republican, is Jay Banks from Indiana. He was interviewed on Fox. He said if Russia did it, they win because we'll never know because they're shredding the evidence now.
Yeah, I heard that too.
But if they didn't do it, well, they win because they're spreading discord.
Well, and then the idea that Russia's going to provide that documentation, it's complete nonsense.
I know, but if Russia didn't do it, how can they be spreading discord?
There's no logic to this.
I know, there isn't anything.
None.
Yeah, geez. So, Trump will be constantly harassed about this now until November. How many days?
125 days.
125 days till the election.
And as they say in Ireland, you won't find that coming.
No, okay.
That's how they describe how quickly something comes.
Yeah. So they're, it's just a mountain of dog pile that he's had to contend with since day one.
Yeah, he deserves a second term, if for no other reason.
Ready for a live game of Clue? For nearly 30 years, Funtime Theater has held private and monthly dinner murder mysteries. Each night is different, and each event includes dinner and a show. You're the detective, and your job is to figure out who...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and our co-host, Leland Faegre. And we're back again to talk about freedom and personal responsibility and individual choice, which we've lost a little bit.
We are?
We've lost a little bit of that here in Nevada with the new restrictions.
Although I still haven't worn a mask. I came in this morning, I didn't wear one.
Yeah,
They looked at me funny here in the station or outside the station here, but I didn't even think about it.
All right. I think Karen's on the line. She said, "You're not social distancing."
Well, I am, because I don't get out. So I am social distancing.
So in the movie Open Range, I don't remember when during the gunfight, Robert Duvall says to the
what do you mean? Don't remember?
Open Range. Remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
You never watch movies, but it was a pretty good movie.
I'm sure it was. Oh, you know what? I saw clips of that thing.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I want to see that movie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it just now hit me that's one that I did want to see.
Yeah.
It's a Western, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Deval says, it looks like you're losing your army, Marshal, as the Marshal's paid henchmen sort of slip away because Kevin Costner is just too good for them. He's too good a shot. But anyway...
Well, we all knew that.
Yeah. The U.S. is losing its foreign policy army. If you haven't noticed, and if you just watch Fox News, you probably haven't, but Pompeo and Trade Representative Navarro's attempts to demonize China are really not going anywhere internationally. So far, no one has really signed on to the anti-Chinese conspiracy theories of COVID-19. No one is stepping forward to join the U.S. We've been trying to promote some kind of alliance about Taiwan, and nobody has stepped forward to join. With the possible exception of Australia, they're very
They need some iron ore
anti-Chinese.
eventually.
Yeah. Only Britain is willing to do something for Hong Kong, saying they're willing to take in some of its citizens if they want to go.
It's that anniversary today as well.
Right. The law is now official. Do you know what the most tweeted on social media in China? The single most tweeted, or they don't have Twitter, I don't think, but they have other social media, TikTok and things like that.
I don't.
Yeah, but it was Nancy Pelosi's comment that during the Hong Kong riots that it was a beautiful sight to behold. So during the Black Lives Matter riots,
right.
they were recirculating that. Yep, got over 1 billion shares.
Interesting.
But anyway, and you know,
she's got a color-coordinated face mask for everything she wears. Have you noticed that?
no, I haven't.
She is one fashionable woman.
Okay.
You haven't noticed that?
No.
If she's wearing a pink dress, she's got a pink face mask. If she has a green dress, she's got a green face mask.
Okay, because usually these guys, you know, they wear their American flag lapel buttons and then they wear their American flag on their face mask. But okay, so getting back to China for a minute, they did arrest 70 people in a demonstration. They said it was an unlawful
200.
assembly. Oh, you heard 200?
I heard 200 this morning.
Well, I heard 70. Who
Yeah.
knows? But at any rate, the law itself, according to the Chinese, is only about stopping foreign interference in Hong Kong. And already one of the protest organizations has folded up shop because they can no longer get money from the National Endowment for Democracy. And they obviously don't have enough grassroots support to keep going.
I just remember standing with Bob Gore, who we've had on the show. He was a bond trader. We've had on the show about his book, you remember? On this day, 20 years ago, and saying to ourselves, how long is this going to last? You know, we just thought this was just an experiment of folly. It was never going to materialize beyond to the, what was it, 2047, I think was the date it was supposed to be in effect till. Yeah, and so we just said, it's not going to happen.
No. And the thing is that a lot of people don't realize that the Hong Kongers have very, we would call racist in the current climate, but very disparaging views of the mainland Chinese. And that was being expressed during the riots. So Black Lives Matter would not approve of the
But you see,
Hong Kong riots.
I would say to that issue is that racism is defended by the First Amendment.
Yes.
It's an ugly thing, but it's certainly legal.
Oh, certainly.
And this is what we keep away from the conversation, apparently, is we don't want to acknowledge just how free the First Amendment is.
Right. There is no First Amendment exception for hate speech.
Right.
Or the only exception is for an immediate incitation to violence.
Like in a crowded movie theater?
No, that's not. You probably knew that, right?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up because, the old saw is you can't shout fire in a crowded movie theater, but that has nothing to do with the First Amendment. That has to do with the quiet enjoyment of of the money you spend on your movie pass.
People have a right to watch that movie.
Yes, exactly. So Japan recently turned down or backed out of a deal to purchase artillery and missiles to place on their outlying islands.
That was about a week ago. That was right
Yeah,
after our
right.
last show, I think. Yeah.
Right. And, of course, the people in Okinawa really want us out. They've wanted us out for years,
Well,
though.
we shouldn't be there for crying out loud.
No.
I mean, honest to God.
I know.
Can't they defend themselves these days?
I know.
They did once upon a time.
South Korea can defend itself, too,
Yeah.
you know. The Philippines, of course, have wanted us out for a while. The Gulf states are inching closer to Syria and Iran because they realize that the game is up. The president of Lebanon, Mikel Aoun, has denounced the U.S. Caesar sanctions. If you don't know it, the U.S. has recently imposed sanctions on poor Syria for no other reason than that they beat us in the war.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
If we didn't do enough damage to that place.
Yes, I know. And it's also, they called in the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador in Lebanon. Her name is Shay. I'm not sure of her first name, but she got called in for a dressing down. When she took over the job, I remember she said that she was going to get Hezbollah out of Lebanon. So good luck with that. But
Well, the sanctions are only going to hurt the people. It's
Right.
usually the case.
right, exactly. And you know, I didn't realize Lebanon had a president. You know,
I know. I know.
I thought there was only one democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, that's what the ADL tells us.
Yeah. And the sanctions will only draw Iran and Syria together. They're going to backfire. Yeah, some of the Syrian people will suffer, but in the meantime, Iran will extend
It's for
its
the better
influence.
good.
Yes, into Syria. But, you know, as Madeleine Albright said, it's worth it.
Yep.
It's worth it. And then the EU is blocking U.S. citizens from flying to Europe. And this is a result of the Boeing fiasco,
Once
the
again,
MAX 8.
Once again, I'm not affected because I had no interest in going.
Well, I do. I like going to Europe. But the thing is that can't go now. And the MAX 8 was really bad. People don't realize how bad that incident was and how corrupt Boeing was. And they're heavily subsidized by the U.S. So it's corporate crony corruption. And so the opinion in most of the European Union, whether it's correct or not, I don't know. I probably not as much as they say so, but they believe that the U.S. has badly managed the pandemic. And they're looking at statistics and so on, but maybe not understanding how our system works and realizing that most of the problem comes from a few areas in the country. But at any rate, the U.S. aviation has lost its premier standing in the world.
Well, as it turns out, this virus is very transmissible. I mean, that's the understatement of the year, isn't it?
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's really nothing more to it than that.
right.
I think we've done everything we can. The thing that's just flying through the air. I saw some of the virus crossing 580 on the way into the biggest little city this morning.
Right.
Big virus streams just flying across the highway there. There's nothing you can do. We are basically in a herd immunity environment now.
Right.
That's what this is. And they don't want to admit it. Nobody's talking about it publicly. But that's what it has come to.
We have to take care of the cure.
Thank you.
That will make the problem worse no matter what.
Thank you, Joe. Oh, my gosh. The comic relief.
Yes. So it is what I was trying to say.
Before I
is
messed
that
you up.
even in Texas,
Yeah.
there had been uptick in cases and in hospitalizations, but the hospitals are nowhere near overstretched.
No, they're not.
No.
No, and yet we don't get that part of the discussion.
No, we don't.
We just hear that the viruses have affected so many more all of a sudden. That's all we hear.
And so who benefits from this information?
Follow the money.
Yep, the pharmaceutical, industrial, congressional media complex.
Elites.
Do we have an acronym for that?
No, but we should get one.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time. Buy local, think local, eat local, choose local, grow local. But who the heck really is local? You can shop with locals at the Nevada Market.
This overload.
Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. And we were just commenting on this whole, if you see something, say something, new culture norm that we are being imposed with. So don't forget, if you see something, call Nevada's hotline, 1-800-KAREN.
Will she answer?
Yeah. YouTube is just filled with all kinds of examples of Karens calling up about black people doing perfectly normal things. It is really a problem. It is really a phenomenon. And it's not the deaths. I mean, the police deaths of black people is what gets all the headlines, but it's just the constant harassment and degradation that they feel. Unfortunately, many of them feel. Of course, some don't, but many of them do. But over the police presence in their communities, and also the way people think about black people. Black people barbecuing in Merritt Park in Oakland. Some white woman called the police on them. A white woman called the police on an 8-year-old black girl who was selling bottled water to raise money to go to Disneyland outside of, on the curb outside her home. Called the cops on her for selling water without a license. You have
it's the cultural wars we're in.
I know. You have that Filipino gay man who wrote Black Lives Matter on the...
Hold the phone. There was a gay Filipino man?
Yeah.
Oh, huh.
But he got caught up in it too. He wrote Black Lives Matter on the wall in front of his house, and the woman, this white woman, called the police on him for defacing private property, even though he lived there.
There's no law against defacing your own property, I guess.
No, I guess not. Bob Marley's granddaughter, she was in a Airbnb, and they were leaving. She and her boyfriend, her husband, were leaving with their luggage, and a white neighbor called the cops on them because they were robbing the house.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Where are you picking this stuff up? I haven't seen this.
Oh, I've become a YouTuber in the last few months, during the isolation, and I find it more satisfying for the most part, I think, than watching the news, regular news, or even regular TV fare. I mean, but at any rate, I'm not justifying the cultural revolution that's going on, and that's what it is. I mean, that's what it looks like to
that's what it
all
is.
People over the world, that this is Mao's cultural revolution.
Yeah, but it's not just here, it's worldwide.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but I think it's most heavily here.
Oh, yeah, because we lead the way on everything.
Right. For example, you can no longer use the term master bedroom. That's now racist.
Right.
And
MasterCard, a friend of mine,
oh yeah,
radio jock at Howie Nave up in Tahoe, used that as a joke yesterday. He changed his MasterCard to a Visa card.
He doesn't want to be called a racist.
He doesn't want to be lined up with the rest of those. So.
Okay. So in more fake news that we've seen over, the Missouri couple who defended their home from the trespassing protesters.
Yeah,
right.
And he had the gentleman on, that is Tucker had the gentleman on last night's show.
Right.
Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. And
he's a lefty.
Yeah, he's a civil rights lawyer.
Yeah, he's a lefty. And he's got apparently some black clients. Mm-hmm. And this is how they treat him. I tell you, I bet you that guy transformed his vote in November, just like that.
Well,
the 300 people invited themselves to a barbecue at his home. I think he's, I'm sure he didn't have that much meat.
No. And CHOP is finally being shut down in Seattle today.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine that goes well, because there were 2 murders there. So they're not going in just to clean up the place. They've got warrants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Although I have to criticize Tucker, I know he's done quite well, and on one of my YouTube shows, Rising, which is an attempt to join the populist left with the populist right, trying to compare and contrast, find areas of agreement and disagreement. But they applauded Tucker for telling his own party, the GOP, that they've got to stop squabbling over all this petty stuff like Russia, and Benghazi. I don't know. Are they still talking about Benghazi?
It comes up every now and again. Well, it was never dealt with.
Right.
I mean, they were running guns out of there into the Syrian theater.
Oh, sure. The rat line that Rand Paul talked about.
That's why her emails were never uncovered, and
right.
The rest of the Clinton scandal that is, as we know it, in fairly recent times, has never been fully exposed for the American people to understand it.
But even though I really try to watch Tucker almost every night, and I agree with 90% of what he says, when he's just wrong about qualified immunity, I have to say.
Okay, go ahead.
He said, Carson said, it wasn't last night, it was a couple of nights ago. Qualified immunity means that cops can't be personally sued when they accidentally violate people's rights when they perform their duties. They can be sued when they do it intentionally, and often are, and that's not true. That's not true. Qualified immunity has no distinction between accidental and intentional wrongdoing. In Fresno recently, cops simply stole $225,000 while carrying out a search warrant. But even though it was recognized as morally wrong, they had qualified immunity because there was no specific court decision or no specific statute.
Was it cash?
In California, I think so. I don't know, but I don't know all the details. But they have to have a specific court decision or statute specifically saying, thou shalt not steal when exercising a search warrant. If they don't have that, it falls under qualified immunity and they can't be sued.
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the point here is that we can't put up so many regulatory impediments to attract good people to law enforcement. It's not a great job. It's a dangerous job.
It's not that dangerous, though.
If you're facing potential guns.
It's still not that dangerous.
Well, see, this is your social liberal.
Well, no, I mean, there are numerous studies. It's about the 13th most dangerous job in America.
That's enough.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, you have cab drivers and a lot of jobs that Mike Rowe has done on his TV show. To be a cop?
Yeah.
No, I mean, and most Irishmen.
So I'm saying it takes a very special type of person that even wants to do that job to begin with.
A sadist?
No, not necessarily, but someone who likes the thrill. I'll describe it that way, of the action that goes with the job.
Yeah.
They do like that, and you can't have philosophers going out answering emergency calls. You can't have social workers going out answering these emergency calls, and that's actually what they are calling for right now.
But that is
absurd.
Juries are not going to award monetary damages under if we get rid of qualified immunity for cops that are sincerely doing their job.
Okay, but the problem is that you cannot make this job any more difficult or dangerous for these people to go out and answer an emergency call, because these emergencies are going to come up.
I know, but the incidents are really egregious. I mean, there is no...
They're isolated. They're not common.
They are fairly common.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
In the inner cities, they're more common than anywhere else.
Oh yeah, they're not so common in white suburbia. Yeah.
Well, there's the welfare state for you.
Mm-hmm.
Poverty, ignorance, and disease right out of the classroom.
Right.
Right out of the transfer payments from Washington, D.C. I mean, you can't address these problems without addressing the welfare state. because they made people dumb and poor.
Well,
They're not well educated, and they don't. I mean, look at Chicago.
So that's school choice you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
But that still doesn't keep you from when you make egregious. I'm not talking about split-second
but they're isolated.
decisions.
They're not common.
Well, if they're isolated, then why's all the opposition to it?
Because it's designed to take America down.
No, it's not.
Oh, absolutely. This is exactly. If you demoralize law enforcement, you will demoralize the very basis for life itself.
Oh boy, that's a
If you don't have peace and security, you don't have anything.
John Lott, I didn't get to this yet.
Yeah,
but
we should all be well armed.
yes.
Yeah.
John Lott said that there is, although cops may have a beneficial impact on crime, he's the famous Second Amendment gun scholar, Second Amendment scholar, and a conservative more than a libertarian.
More guns, less crime.
Yeah, more guns, less crime. But he says that the money we paid to cops would be much better spent just buying money for personal firearm protection.
Well, I would say that would be the best place to start.
Right.
We should definitely do that. Yeah.
Right.
But it can't be at the expense of law enforcement. You can't make people own a gun. This is not Switzerland.
Yeah, but the fact is that law enforcement is vastly overrated in their deterrent effect on crime. They don't solve that many crimes. They put their best and their brightest on homicide, and they still only solve about 60% of the crimes.
Okay, but what's the alternative? It's not a perfect world, you know.
Private security.
Firearm ownership,
and things like, well, it's too late now. We'll come back to it.
Oh, it's never too late.
Did you know that 4,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 5 Gauss? Over the last 165 years, scientists have measured the Earth's magnetic field and found that today it is only...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, the socially liberal Brendan Trainer.
Fiscally conservative.
Fiscally conservative, though.
Yeah.
And Leland Faegre.
I always thought that was a very simplistic way to describe libertarianism.
Right,
but,
it is.
But for the sake of
the only one worse is a low-tax liberal. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, I've heard that one. By the way, you know what other anniversary this is today? The 1st of July? The first vote on independence from Britain was held on this day.
Oh, okay. The very first vote, and then it was officially signed on July 4th?
3 days later, I think there was another vote or something.
But that, Jefferson was a racist, so we can just discount that.
You know how I knew that?
No.
Because I heard it on Christian's show this morning.
Oh, okay. All right.
Christian doesn't want to take credit for it, but it was a good piece of trivia.
Okay.
It's good stuff.
So we were talking about the police, and we were talking about qualified immunity, and I'm saying that it's not what a lot of conservatives are saying it is, and that, the police screamed bloody murder when the Warren Court put in the Miranda rule and the exclusionary rule. Mm-hmm. They said they might as well close up shop. Mm-hmm. So it's to me, it's more of the same thing.
Yeah, but I think it was unnecessary.
What, the Miranda rule?
Yeah.
You have the right to remain silent?
Yeah, you should know that already.
Yeah, okay.
So this goes back to the argument of the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Were they really necessary?
Yeah. Well, because the people will never, disobey the common law that has been in England, the rights of the Englishman.
Jefferson said absolutely necessary, and Madison said no. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that debate will always be part of the libertarian dialogue, I think.
We definitely would not have a First Amendment without the Bill of Rights, that's for sure. And now the Second Amendment is...
well, it carried the day for sure.
Yeah. The Fourth and the Fifth are pretty much eviscerated, unfortunately.
But the Ninth and the 10th are becoming more and more important all the time.
Right.
Because if it gets even uglier, and I expect it will, there could be just states left. I mean, we'll start moving out to Montana and Idaho and Wyoming, and we're too close to California here.
That's right. So we'll have a white flight region up there in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming.
And this opens up the discussion of why some of these Confederates were taken down. These statues were taken down. I mean, these people were patriots to their cause, which was secession.
But now they're traitors. That's what everybody on the news is using that word. They were just traitors.
Which is just flat out wrong.
No.
And the antebellum South had every right to secede. Every right.
Yeah, you can argue that, but that's definitely a lot of people believe that. Yes.
And as a result, it cost us 650,000 people on both sides.
Right. And
there were countries that bought the slaves. There was no bloodshed.
Right.
We didn't do that.
But as far as reparations go, what they really should have done is given the plantation to the slaves and given the plantation owners 40 acres and a mule.
How they did it was,
that was the time for reparations.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
150 years
not
later.
Now. Yeah.
No. Give the slave driver the 40 acres and a mule, and give the slaves the plantation.
I'm telling you, Lincoln should have been impeached before he was assassinated.
Yeah.
That's how flagrant his violations of the Constitution were.
Right. And people really cared about the Constitution in those days.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying that Tucker, I just don't like it when Tucker conflates the truth, when he uses arguments to uphold law and order that are not true. I mean, you can have your opinion, like you and I disagree on whether qualified immunity, getting rid of it, would be a good thing for the cops.
Well, I'm just saying that
or for most government officials, not just the police.
I'm just saying it has to be worked out to the extent that it's accurately in place, should it be necessary.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. And Tim Scott's bill apparently was a non-starter. They just walked out.
Democrats just blocked that.
They didn't want to have anything to do with it because they want to carry this conversation into the November election.
That's right. They're not interested in solving the problem.
I don't have a lot of sympathy for the argument for change because they're not ready to change it. To hell with them. We'll just keep it the way it is.
So you don't like the idea of sending social workers on certain calls?
It's counterintuitive. Someone breaking into my house, can I call a social worker?
Well, that's not what it would be for.
We don't know. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous.
Having a different 311, it's not. The police are not trained for that sort of thing. I mean, they kill mentally disturbed. I remember they shot a mentally disturbed man. All he had in his hand was a pencil. He didn't even have a ballpoint pen. Didn't even have a knife in his hand, and they shot him. They're just not trained to deal with, mentally disturbed people. And even the police chief of Houston, back in a couple of years ago, when they had the original Black Lives Matters outbreak, the police chief in Houston said that the cops are asked to do too much.
Well, I've said that on the show.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we asked them to do things they shouldn't have to do.
And the original Bobbies were mostly social workers.
Make a case that they still are.
But I've seen videos of the police, how they handle mentally disturbed people there, and they don't shoot them. The guy's holding a knife and waving it at them, and they're just patient.
They don't have guns to shoot them.
Well, they can call in the guns if they need to.
They're out there.
But you're right. And, even in horrible, barbarous Russia, most of the police in Moscow don't carry guns.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they mostly have, they call for backup if they really need it. But then, and police unions. So now that's something conservatives can get behind.
Yeah.
And
I don't have any sympathy for unions anywhere.
Yeah, and especially public unions.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly, the worst.
The thing about private unions, from a freedom point of view, is that the problem with private unions is the violence is not against the owners, but when there's violence, it's against the other workers, as the so-called scabs, those who are willing to work for the other pay where they were not.
Right.
And, I worked a union job for the last few years, and I did okay with it, but the fact is that union jobs create unemployment, and the people that are lucky enough to have a union job, they do it at the expense of non-unionized workers. But if the whole, because it reduces, if they are getting paid higher than the market rate, then the non-unionized workers will be getting paid less than the market rate.
Support your local law enforcement, but keep them independent.
Yes.
That was the John Birch Society's slogan for many years, probably still is. I don't see it emblazoned on their materials anymore, but I mean, it's good counsel to disconnect those two.
How about more community input, even community control of police departments?
Well, to the extent that they would want to involve themselves would be one issue, and then whether, if you have, I used to be a president of a homeowners association, and those things are just awfully messy.
Yes.
And they're only as good as the people who contribute, their expertise to the board decisions. Right. It's the same would be true here.
Police must live in or very near to the neighborhoods that they police.
I think that's a good idea, but how would you compel that?
You would have to make it part of their contract.
So I mean, it's...
Or their job qualification, that they have to move into the area that they police. And again, we're a long way from a really constitutional law enforcement, which would be, back in the day at the founders, I think the Third Amendment, the quartering of soldiers, that is sort of, although no court is going to apply it now, but that would apply to the situation of the police now, because when the British troops were quartered in people's homes, they were mostly there to enforce civil warrants, the broad general warrants on searches and seizures, and they would have a presence, a militarized presence in the community, which is similar to what people are saying is the case with the police now. So, but in the old days, it was considered a duty. Law enforcement was part of the duty of a citizen, and you got a private warrant. If somebody did something bad to you, you would go to the grand jury, which was citizens. They were not controlled. Very few professional prosecutors took cases in those days. It would have to be against the state. But for a crime against an individual, you would go to the grand jury for a warrant, and they would actually investigate.
They would do the investigation.
The actual grand jury would, for the most part.
That couldn't happen today.
Yeah, well, it couldn't, but the idea, the germ of the idea was there to have a better structure, I think, than we have today, which is, basically a militarized...
Are you talking about on a local level?
On a local level.
On a local level, yeah.
If it had been allowed to develop, and if we hadn't fallen in love with the idea of a professional, police like we have, and expanded their powers as much as we have, that kind of system could have worked out. There could have been businesses, for example, detective agencies, things of that nature. And they could take it on spec. One thing I don't like about criticism of libertarianism, I think if you're poor, you can't afford it if we have a libertarian society. But there would be means to afford it. People would take it on spec or things of that nature. And we might have missed a call. Sorry if we missed you. We'll be back next week.